I just brewed my coffee because I'm definitely gonna need it for this one because I have so many questions to answer from you. Hello everyone and welcome to the first official Q&A of 2024. During the holiday season, I posted on the YouTube community, on Instagram, on X, on Threads, and I asked you to ask me anything you want, and today I'm going to answer your questions. I have to say I was blown away not only by the sheer number of questions, but also how interesting your questions are. So let's get started. I'll be completely honest with you. I started printing out your questions so that I could read them more easily when making this video. But in the end, I would have to waste a lot of paper. Instead, I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way on my phone. First question, how long did it take to build your studio? That's a very good question. I'm still building it. You know, it's actually true. I don't think your studio is ever fully ready. But to answer your question, I think I've been building my studio for the past 25 years. I've been building my studio way before I started doing YouTube videos. Started with a Sound Blaster 128 PCI on a Pentium 3 computer running Windows 98, 95. Can't really remember, and a Yamaha PSR keyboard. This was my first studio and this was my first setup that I used to do my first professional job, which was creating library music. Did this job for a while and this is how I started making money, and I invested all this money to build my studio. Now the thing with studios is that while you're building it, your needs might change. Your skills might change. For example, there's no point in investing in a massive passive EQ if you don't know how to do your gain staging. It doesn't make any sense. So while your skills evolve as well, you might feel that you need more gear and better gear because you can appreciate the better gear and you have the skills to take advantage of this better gear. I'm going to try and search and find some photos of my previous studio incarnations. I hope I'm gonna find them. And you will see that I started with a very modest setup. Next question, how to add more low end to 808s? Unless you're using a really bad 808 sample or something, 808s already have way too much low end. One thing that you don't want to do is to add more low end to your 808s. The 808 should be like your reference where your low end should be in your track, and then everything else should be balanced according to this low end. If anything, if you want to make your 808 more present, audible on smaller speakers, on smaller reproduction systems, then what you want to do is add a little bit of harmonic content to an 808. Great ways to do this is adding parallel saturation. You can add a harmonic exciter like the R-Bass from Waves, or one of my favorite ones is the BBE harmonic exciter. Another great plugin for 808 is the Bass Lane Pro from Tone Project. But in general, be careful with adding low end to 808s. They already have too much low end, so you might be suffocating your mix. Next, I have two kind of similar questions. How long is your working time per day? And how is your routine in a week from waking up to go to sleep? So, I don't sleep. I'm joking, obviously, but yeah, sometimes the days can be very long. So I wake up early, and the first thing I do is I do all the admin work, I do all my emails, I do all the meetings that I have to do, and then I lock myself in the studio and start working on any mastering project, mixing project, production project. I might be composing some music for a film or a TV ad. This is pretty much how the day goes by, and sometimes I go very late into the night. I'm a night owl. I have my creative juices flowing late at night. I'm not a morning person, I have to admit. I don't function very well in the morning. That's why I do all the admin stuff in the morning, and then the creative stuff I leave for late at night. And one thing that I actually struggle with is making these YouTube videos, because I have to make these videos when I have downtime, when I'm not doing something else. And contrary to what some people think, YouTube is not my main profession. This is not what I do. It's just a small fraction of what I do. One thing that I'm really grateful for is that for my work, no day is exactly the same like the previous one. And this is great because I can get very easily bored. How do you implement your outboard gear into your workflow and manage session recalls? I think this should be a dedicated video. Basically, what I do is I have all my analog gear and they're connected to different parts of my signal chain. So I have two patch bays. I have the Dangerous Music Liaison Mark II, and I also have the Flock Audio patch. So the Liaison takes care of my mastering chain, and the Flock Audio takes care of my mixing chain. This way I can use all the gear that I have, and I have loads of analog gear, reroute them, patch them exactly how I want without even pulling a cable. I don't use any patch bays, traditional patch bays. I hate those. I've been using them in studios for my entire professional life. I hate them, especially when it's analog. It is a bit of a pain, you know, everybody knows that, but I have to say I have a good system. So the first thing that I do is I use, let me see what the app is called. The app is called Session Recall. I have all my gear in there in models, so basically I can recall all the settings per project. Of course, recalling them takes time. There's no way around it. You have to be very careful, and especially for mastering situations, you have to be super precise, setting up all your gear exactly how it was. And for anything that's not included in the Session Recall app, like for example, I don't know if you can you see it? Yeah. For example, the Mini Moog that I have in the back, it doesn't have presets. I do it the old school way and I take photos. You can actually tell from my hoodie right here. I'm gonna have links below for these. I love analog, so I'm prepared to go through this process. Why initially did you choose the DAW that you use, and how was the initial journey of attempting to learn the guts of it and become proficient at it? And how did your needs and workflow change over time, and did your DAW adapt to your new workflow, or did you need to adapt to your DAW? I think this deserves an entire video. When I started out, I tried all the DAWs. All of them. Back then it was also Sonar, it was Reason, it was Fruity Loops, it wasn't called FL Studio back then, Cubase of course, Pro Tools, and Ableton didn't exist back then, and I think I tried even Digital Performer and Logic of course. So why did I choose Cubase? Back then I was lucky enough, I was still a teenager and I had lots of time in my hands to try all the DAWs. So what I was doing was I was creating a song on each one of these DAWs. Like seriously, from start to finish. I was very disciplined though, so I was starting a song in Fruity Loops and I was saying to myself, I'm going to commit to this, I'm going to finish this song right here in Fruity Loops. If I don't finish it here, I failed. And then I would move on to Cubase, I would move on to Sonar, Logic, and so on and so forth. Back then, Logic was still for PC, by the way. So after trying all the DAWs and creating at least one song on each DAW, I figured easily that my choice would be Cubase. I feel that I can communicate with this DAW as a musician. I like a DAW that has terminology that's musical. For example, the chord tracks, the chord pads, the inversions for the chords. When my DAW tells me invert the chord, I understand that musicians made this DAW. They were not just programmers that created this DAW. And for me, this is very important. And the great thing with Cubase, and I adopted this very early on, is it had the best combination of tools for everything that I do, which includes composing, producing, mixing, mastering, and sound design. Of course, while I was progressing, I had to keep using other DAWs because then I started working in professional studios, which means I had to be very proficient with Pro Tools, I had to learn Ableton, I had to know Logic, I had to know all these DAWs because I worked in several studios throughout my career, and each studio had a different DAW, and I needed to be not only the producer and engineer, but I needed to maintain this DAW. Oh, there are glitches. What should we do? Oh, okay, that's the quirk for this DAW. There are other DAWs that I enjoy using and I like some of the features that they have, but I think that Cubase is evolving in every version, and we have to admit that it's one of these DAWs that every year you have something new to wait for, and this is not the case with many other DAWs. For some DAWs, you wait for months for an incremental tiny update. I have progressed, Cubase has progressed, and it's still the right DAW for me. How much headroom do you leave in your mix for master? So I'm not going to bore you, I'm going to try and give you a value here. I'm trying to have a headroom of around -12 to -6 dBs. Realistically, you can go up to -3 if you want to, but I know that I'm going to be taking care of my mastering. So what I do is I always make sure that I have enough headroom to add all these little stages of enhancement to the mix when it comes to the mastering stage. So for example, I might add some EQ, this might add 1 or 2 dBs, then I might add some saturation, then I might add some compression, then I might add some other tricks that I do, maybe some clipping from the converters. So because I know my mastering process, there's no point in going to -3, because with -3, I don't have enough room to play. I always have to bring it down, because if you don't do this, you will go into this counterproductive procedure of level matching with everything inside your chain, which is a valid way of doing things, but it slows you down. For a fact, if you leave enough headroom, then you know, okay, I know that I'm going to add a little bit of gain with the saturation, maybe 1 to 2 dBs, or even less than that. But I do this intentionally. I'm not doing this because I'm tricking myself. Okay, the next question is very interesting. The hardware or software you regret to have bought? I have to say, I do a lot of research when I buy my gear, so I haven't regretted too many of my purchases. But I'm going to answer your question. One of the pieces of hardware that I regretted buying, and I know that some people are going to hate me for saying this, is the Electron Digitact drum machine. I have to say though, this wasn't because it's a bad piece of gear. I think it's brilliant actually. It just didn't work well for my workflow. So as you know, I tend to be a very hands-on kind of musician. So when I want to play drums, I play them on the keys, or I use pads, or I use something else. What I expect from a drum machine is to be super easy to program, so I can have a pattern straight away, so I can start composing on it. I want to write songs. I don't care about, tweaking all these little parameters on a drum machine, and Digitact is so deep. So when I got it, I watched all the amazing tutorials from incredible YouTubers like Bo Beats and Cuckoo. And then I found it quite easy to use, but then I figured out that when I wasn't using it for a while, I was forgetting everything, and I had to go back to these videos, rewatch them, and start learning the thing again. And I couldn't just do a quick groove the way I wanted. Just load a sample quickly, just boom, start creating a groove, go to my synth, to my montage, to my mini moog or whatever, and start composing. I'm a songwriter, I write songs, I do all these things, so I don't want a piece of gear to slow me down when I have an idea in my head. And I found that while using Digitact, it deprived me of quite a few ideas, because while I was trying to figure it out, the idea was gone. So I sold it. Like I said, it wasn't a bad piece of gear. It was my fault, because for my workflow, I don't mind complicated synths or pieces of gear, but for drum machines, I want to be able to create a groove straight away. What tools inside Cubase and also outside Cubase do you use to get your creativity flowing? This question ties up really nicely with the previous question. One of my favorite tools to use, and it has been like this for many years, is the Yamaha montage. By far, the fact that I can turn it on and I have this huge palette of sounds to play with, this is exactly what I need to get my creative juices flowing. When it comes to Cubase, with Cubase, it's all about finding some really cool plugins to get them under my fingers, especially when I'm writing music for films and I need orchestral sounds. Cubase comes into play because I load my favorite libraries and I start playing, and I always have patches that have all the instruments under my fingertips. I like good sounds. If there's anything that inspired me since I was a kid, was sounds. I like to be able to just have a sound under my fingers, play it, and then a song will come out of it. This is exactly what I want. Having several synths helps, but you don't have to have so many synths. The same goes for guitars, I might pick up a guitar and start playing something, I run it through a pedal or something like this, and I can immediately have a song in my head. The same goes for basses. For me, it's all about instruments and how a sound can inspire me for a song or for a piece of music. It would be absolutely great if you ever decided to make a vocal template, both with waves, plugins, and stock. Actually, I've made a video, you've probably watched it, about how to get a great vocal sound with just Waves plugin. So if you haven't watched it, I'm gonna link it right here. But I think you're probably talking about Cubase templates, right? This is something that many people have asked me for, I have to admit. Let me know in the comments, are you interested in me creating like templates, like entire signal chains in Cubase with stock plugins or with a specific developer? Would that be useful? I don't know. I definitely have so many presets that I use them all the time as starting points. But yeah, I mean, let me know in the comments down below if you'd be interested in seeing templates and signal chains. I might think about it. Have you ever thought about a complete course about music production, sound design, or Cubase stock only? Yes. I think I have like at least 20 emails per month from people asking me to do this. And you know, the thing is, it takes a long time. I started doing this at some point and then some work got in the way and I had to stop. But, you know, now that you mention it, if you want me to do this, let me know in the comments down below. I want to see how many people are interested in this. What would you like to see when it comes to a course? Hey Dom, your mastery of sample instruments is truly inspiring. Do you have any recommendations for sample libraries specifically geared towards bridging the gap between Western and Middle Eastern music styles? When it comes to non-Western music, right, I think people are missing out so much. I'm a musicologist. I studied musicology for 5 years. And of course, I studied ethnomusicology. There are so many things in the Eastern music cultures that are so interesting, like the microtonal system, the different time signature, the rhythms, all these things. You know, sometimes we think of bands like Dream Theater and we say, oh, you know, they have this really complicated time signature there. And for these cultures, this is like, you know, they grow up like this, they dance to this, it's not complicated. I do have a video about my favorite ethnic music libraries, so I'm going to have to schedule this, and I'm going to give you my personal thoughts about my favorite ethnic music libraries. I don't like the word ethnic, but you know what I mean. But yeah, definitely it's a great way to color your tracks, even if you have like an element. It happens all the time in pop music, in dance music, it's all over the place. So yeah, I'm gonna make a video, stick around. Hey Dom, how do you manage your sounds and samples? Could you please tell us how to organize them? I use the Cubase Media Bay. This is the way that I organize my files. I also rate all my samples, you know, with the star system in Cubase. I actually have made a Media Bay video on my channel, so make sure you check it out because I explain a lot of things there, but this is what I use. I use Media Bay. What advice do you have for a beginner in Cubase who just started learning and becoming you takes 3 times a lifetime? One piece of advice I can say is use your DAW as much as possible to create music. This is the only way to learn a DAW. You need to start creating a song or a piece of music, then you will come at an obstacle. And then you have to learn how to overcome this obstacle. These days, it's very simple. We have YouTube, we have the internet. There's so many things. Back in the day, when I was finding something that I couldn't do in Cubase, I would have to go through a 900-page manual to figure out how to do a certain thing. And of course, if I didn't know the terminology, I wouldn't know where to look. I think you have to start making music, be excited about what you're doing, and then when you hit a wall because you found that, oh, how do I do this? How do I add reverb to my vocal? You know, something super simple. You can find this online. I've done tons of Cubase minute videos answering these very, very simple questions. And I would say learn your shortcuts. This is the next piece of advice. This is what makes you really proficient and a power user in any DAW. How you like your Crownborn interface, or if you have the ADAT, how you like it and how you use those in your mix when you have all the other mixing tools available. Do you find yourself reaching for your 500 series more now? Because I want to invest in a Crownborn interface. I don't have the interface, I have the ADAT 500. Basically, I connect this to my audio interface via ADAT, and now I have all these beautiful pieces of gear. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? It's right there. It allows you to have 2 ADAT cables, and then you can use all these beautiful pieces of analog 500 series gear. To answer your question, I love it. I absolutely love it. I use my 500 series and they do sound really special, so they are my beloved tools for specific tasks. The one thing that I would like to have with the Crownborn would be a simpler version with more slots. So maybe 12 slots, or I don't know how many more they fit in there, but you know, at least 10. I don't need all the routing functions. That would be amazing, and I would go for this one any day straight away. My question is related to the Yamaha side of things. What is your job at Yamaha? Are you a Yamaha synth specialist or a Yamaha artist? How did you start working with them? I remember the first video video I saw you doing with them was the Yamaha PSR S series. I don't think I've ever done a PSR video for Yamaha. So I've been using Yamaha synths and instruments since I remember myself. So I'm a huge fan, and everybody that knows me knows that I've been a huge fan since I was like, I don't know, 12 years old or maybe younger than this. I had several PSRs. I had the Motif range of synthesizers. I had the Motif ES, the Motif XF, the Montage now the Montage M. And I'm a huge fan of the sound. I'm a huge fan of the quality of all Yamaha instruments. I never had to service any Yamaha instrument. They build them to last, and I really appreciate that. The sound always resonated with me when it comes to Yamaha instruments. Now, I knew nobody from Yamaha, but I met people from Yamaha like maybe 12 years ago, maybe more than this. That was before the YouTube era and all these things, in a music production show here in London. And basically I went there, was checking out the new synth that they had, and we started talking. And long story short, I started doing some specialist work for them. And then I was also featured as an artist to several of their campaigns or videos. And the main thing that I do for Yamaha these days is sound design. So I create sounds for their high-end boards like the Yamaha Montage, the Montage M, the Modi X. And on the side, because I'm running a video production company here in London, I've created several videos for them, and I also compose the music for the videos, and I produce the music for the videos. So yeah, this is what I do for Yamaha. I love their stuff, and honestly, never once on my channel have I talked about a piece of gear or a company that I don't really appreciate and don't really like their stuff. Okay, I think this is going to be the last question for today. I'm sorry that I cannot answer all the questions, but I kept all the rest of the questions, so I'm going to answer them on a future video. And also I'm going to answer any question that you're going to leave down below. So make sure you leave your questions here so that I can include them on the next video. If Cubase didn't exist, which DAW would you use as your main DAW? Okay, that's a tough one. Probably two DAWs. One would be Logic. The reason is because Logic is the closest thing to Cubase. When it comes to the MIDI flexibility, it feels a little bit more creative. I'm very familiar with it. I know how to use it very well. But one of the things where Logic doesn't cut it for me, okay, no offense to anyone that uses Logic, is the mixing facilities. I feel that many things are missing when it comes to the mixer in Logic. So for that reason, I would probably use Logic in combination with Pro Tools. Pro Tools, I wouldn't personally use it for MIDI, and I think I'm not the only one, but the mixer in Pro Tools is really good. I've used it for ages in studios that were using Pro Tools, and the audio editing is a little bit better in Pro Tools compared to Logic, in my opinion. Just my opinion, okay? But I would have to use two DAWs, where Cubase ticks both boxes for me. So I would say Logic and Pro Tools. Yeah, I think that would be it, but I really hope I don't have to do this. So there you go, my friends. This is the end for the first Q&A of 2024. In the comments down below, leave me your questions so that I can include them for the next Q&A. Because if you like it, I'm gonna make more of these and I'm going to answer more of your questions. If you haven't subscribed, don't forget to subscribe, you know the drill. And if you want to support the channel, you can also use the super thanks button or grab any of my instruments like the Modern 80s Kit Max or the Apollo Expansion for Pad Shop. And if you enjoyed this video, you might also enjoy this video or this video. Thank you, my friends. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.